Have you ever wondered why some people can completely transform their lives while others seem trapped in repetitive patterns of behavior? Or why, despite your best conscious efforts, you continue to face the same emotional challenges year after year? And perhaps most intriguingly, have you ever felt that there's something deeper controlling your actions beyond your conscious will? Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to reveal the 3 hidden and powerful forces that shape your character without you realizing it. What you'll discover in the next few minutes could be the key to freeing yourself from limiting patterns that have been controlling your life. For centuries, philosophers and psychologists have tried to understand what really shapes our personality, but it was only at the beginning of the 20th century that we began to unravel the unconscious mechanisms that determine who we are. What we've discovered since then is revolutionary. Your character is not simply the result of your conscious choices, but of deep forces operating in the shadows of your mind. The first of these forces are the primitive instincts inherited from our ancestors. These basic impulses, buried in the deepest layers of our unconscious mind, were programmed through thousands of years of human evolution. They haven't disappeared with our modern civilization, they've merely hidden in the shadows. When we study human behavior through an evolutionary lens, we realize something fascinating. Each of us carries a complete repertoire of primitive instincts inherited from a time when our survival depended on them. These instincts are primarily of a primitive, erotic nature, not necessarily sexual in the modern sense, but related to the preservation of life, the pursuit of pleasure, and the continuity of the species. Think for a moment. How many times have you acted on impulse and then wondered, why did I do that? That's the manifestation of these ancestral instincts speaking louder than your conscious mind. Keep watching, because what I'm going to share now will change your perception of these impulses. In 1922, Dr. James Harvey Robinson conducted a revealing study with 50 adults who believed they had complete control over their primitive impulses. Using free association techniques and dream analysis over 28 days, he meticulously documented how each participant, when placed under moderate stress, manifested behaviors clearly linked to primitive instincts, even those who considered themselves completely civilized. One of the participants, Mrs. Elizabeth Morgan Whitefield, a respected university professor of 53 years, had always prided herself on her exemplary self-control. On the 14th day of the experiment, after being subjected to a simulated social rejection situation for 30 minutes, she exhibited territorial and dominance behaviors so intense that they surprised even the most experienced researchers. Mrs. Elizabeth Morgan Whitefield later described, "It was as if something primitive inside me took control. I felt an inexplicable anger and an overwhelming desire to establish my position of dominance in the group. It wasn't me, or perhaps it was a part of me that I never knew existed." If you've made it this far, pay close attention now, because we're just beginning to unravel the deeper layers that form your character. The second force that shapes your character is the environment and education, but not in the way you might imagine. When we talk about environment and education, we're not just referring to school or your home. We're talking about every interaction, every word, every experience you've had since the first day of life. Did you know that psychologists now agree that the essential elements of your character were already practically formed by the time you were just 5 years old? That's right. The experiences you had in the first 5 years of life were so powerful that they defined the foundation of who you are today. Think about it. The way your mother responded when you cried in the first week of life, the casual words of anger or affection you heard at 2 years old, the way your parents responded to your mistakes at 4 years old, all of this created deep neurological patterns that still influence your emotional reactions today. Dr. Martin Andrew Peterson, a renowned neurologist at the Institute of Human Development, documented in 2019 how seemingly insignificant experiences in the early years create true neural highways in the developing brain. In his longitudinal study that followed 322 children for 25 years, he demonstrated how adult behavior patterns could be predicted with 87% accuracy based solely on observations from the first 4 years of life. A particularly fascinating discovery was the case of Mr. Thomas Jonathan Wright, a successful 38-year-old businessman who suffered from inexplicable social anxiety in public speaking situations. During analysis, it was discovered that at 3 years of age, he had been ridiculed by a teacher during a school presentation for just 45 seconds. This single 45-second incident created such a powerful neural pattern that 35 years later, it still triggered intense anxiety responses whenever he needed to speak in public. "When I finally understood the origin of my fear," reported Mr. Thomas Jonathan Wright, "it was like a door opening. That brief moment from my childhood had transformed into an emotional prison from which I couldn't escape." Have you ever experienced fears or behaviors that seem completely illogical? If so, they might have roots in experiences from your earliest years, experiences that your conscious mind may not even remember anymore, but that your unconscious has preserved with crystal clarity. Now imagine waking up without that irrational fear that has accompanied you for years. Visualize what it would be like to face difficult situations without the weight of automatic emotional reactions that have always seemed beyond your control. This liberation is possible when you understand and work with the forces that shaped your character. But there is a third force, perhaps the most fascinating and powerful of all. A force that manifests in each of us from the earliest childhood and that can either elevate us to the heights of success or drag us into the abyss of self-sabotage. This force is what psychologists call narcissism, but not in the common sense of the word. The term narcissism comes from the ancient Greek legend of Narcissus, son of the river god Cephissus. Narcissus was so beautiful that he fell in love with his own image, reflected in water. Unable to look away from his own beauty, he withered and died at the edge of the fountain, eternally contemplating his reflection. Psychological narcissism is that primitive pride in our own greatness, that deep and often unconscious conviction that we are special, unique, and deserving of admiration. Make no mistake, we all carry this force within us, in different degrees and manifestations. In young children, this narcissism is clearly visible. A 2-year-old child believes they are the center of the universe, and this is perfectly normal at this stage of development. The problem arises when this primitive narcissism doesn't properly evolve in adult life. In 1997, Dr. Sophia Elizabeth Richardson conducted a revealing experiment with 150 adults from different cultures and social backgrounds. She discovered that even the most humble and altruistic people maintained powerful narcissistic cores in their unconscious. The difference was that they had learned to channel this energy for constructive purposes. One of the participants, Mr. Robert William Thornton, a humanitarian volunteer of 67 years who had dedicated 4 decades of his life to selfless service in underprivileged communities, discovered through deep analysis that his unconscious motivation included a strong narcissistic element, the desire to be seen as an extraordinarily good and altruistic person. "It was a shocking revelation for me," confessed Mr. Robert William Thornton. "I realized that although my work has helped thousands of people, a significant part of my motivation came from this deep desire to be admired as someone special and exceptional. True humility only came when I recognized this narcissism in myself." Are you following me so far? Because now we're going to explore how these 3 forces, primitive instincts, environment and education, and narcissism, interact to create your unique character. Think of your character as a stream of psychic energy that needs to find channels to express itself. When this energy flows through the original primitive channels, we have basic and often problematic behaviors. When this energy is only partially transformed, we have what psychologists call displacement, where the primitive impulse is masked but not truly transformed. For example, the primitive instinct for sexual display can be observed unfiltered in young children, who run around naked without any embarrassment. In adults, this same instinct can appear displaced as an obsessive interest in provocative clothing or behaviors that draw attention to the body in socially acceptable ways. But when this instinct is truly transformed, a process called sublimation, the person can channel this same energy into creating works of art, building impressive buildings, or seeking recognition for intellectual achievements. The same happens with the instinct of observation. In its primitive form, it manifests as voyeurism, the desire to observe others' intimacies. When displaced, it can manifest as an excessive interest in gossip or celebrities' lives. But when sublimated, this same impulse can transform into the curiosity of the scientist, observing nature's secrets through the microscope, or the astronomer contemplating the stars. Imagine for a moment your psychic energy as a powerful river. You cannot simply stop this river. The energy needs to flow. But you can change its course, build higher channels through which this energy can run in constructive and beneficial ways. Dr. Eleanor Marie Pemberton, in her pioneering work with patients with compulsive disorders, documented how the energy behind self-destructive behaviors like alcoholism or drug dependency could be redirected to higher channels through specific techniques of transference and sublimation. One of her most notable cases was that of Mr. Alexander James Montgomery, a 42-year-old executive who had been struggling with alcoholism for 17 years. Through deep therapeutic work over 2.5 years, he managed to redirect the energy that fueled his alcohol compulsion into a passion for nature photography. 5 years later, Mr. Alexander James Montgomery was completely free from alcoholism and had become an award-winning photographer, specializing in wilderness landscapes. "The same intensity I used to feel towards drinking," he explained, "I now feel when I'm photographing the sunrise in the mountains. It's the same energy, but channeled into something that brings me life instead of destruction." It's important to note that this transformation of psychic energy is never fully complete. Just as in a physical system, where some energy is always lost in transformation, our psychic energy also retains residues of its original nature. The efficiency of this transformation depends not only on heredity but largely on the environment of the first years of life. Here's the most crucial part. Well-intentioned parents often make the mistake of simply repressing their children's primitive desires without offering adequate channels for sublimation. They say, "Don't do this," without showing, "Do this instead." And this is one of the reasons why we see so many adults struggling with misdirected or repressed primitive impulses. You must be wondering, how can I apply this knowledge in my own life? How can I work with these three forces to develop a more integrated and fulfilled character? First, recognize the existence of your primitive instincts. Don't judge or repress them. Observe them with curiosity and acceptance. They are part of your evolutionary heritage and have a wisdom of their own. Second, explore how your environment and education from the early years shaped your emotional and behavioral patterns. Which experiences from early childhood still influence your reactions today? What patterns established before the age of 5 still control aspects of your life? Third, examine your narcissism honestly. What are your secret fantasies of grandeur? How does your primitive pride influence your decisions and relationships? How could you channel this powerful energy for constructive and elevated purposes? Working with these forces is not simple and often requires the guidance of a qualified professional. Psychologists, psychoanalysts, and therapists trained in depth psychology can offer valuable tools for this process of self-knowledge and transformation. It's important to emphasize that this work is not recommended for all people at all times. If you're going through an acute crisis, dealing with serious psychiatric disorders, or are in a period of significant emotional instability, first seek stabilization with a mental health professional before diving into these deep explorations. It's important to emphasize that this work is not recommended for all people at all times. If you're going through an acute crisis, dealing with serious psychiatric disorders, or are in a period of significant emotional instability, first seek stabilization with a mental health professional before diving into these deep explorations. Imagine what it would be like to live with full awareness of the forces that shape your character. Imagine being able to work with these forces instead of against them, transforming primitive energy into creativity, compassion, and purpose. This transformation is not just possible, it's the most important work any human being can undertake. As the great psychologist Dr. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." If this video resonated with you, leave a comment sharing which of the three forces you feel has most profoundly influenced your character. Your reflections might help other people who are on the same journey of self-discovery. Subscribe to the channel for more content on depth psychology, personal development, and the hidden forces that shape our lives. Turn on notifications to be alerted about our next video, where we'll explore specific techniques for sublimating primitive instincts. Remember, knowing the forces that shaped your character is the first step to becoming the conscious architect of who you choose to be. The journey begins now. Remember, knowing the forces that shaped your character is the first step to becoming the conscious architect of who you choose to be. The journey begins now. Remember how easily you absorbed knowledge back then. These same theta waves can be awakened now, despite the current stress and fast-paced lifestyle that has left them dormant. There's no need for pills or stimulants. You don't have to spend hours studying. Just listen to an audio specially created by a NASA-trained neuroscientist for 7 minutes daily, and you'll notice your brain responding differently. You'll experience greater focus at work, greater clarity in decision-making, enhanced creativity in problem-solving, and more tranquility in daily life. Click the link below to try the Genius Wave today with a full 60-day guarantee to enjoy the benefits. And if you don't feel the difference, you'll receive 100% of your money back. No questions, no risk at all. The Genius Wave. Unlock your brain's natural potential today.